Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings, and for the last book of the Warriors of the Mist trilogy, we are now on Honor's Price, which is primarily about a romance between Kane and the lady of that particular castle. And that's Lady Theda, and who she is Duke Kierthan's brother's widow. So basically, we learn over the last book and this book that basically there was the old Duke, and he had two sons, and a daughter, and the daughter is Lavinia, and he had Lavinia with his I suppose you could call her mistress or something. Um, Basically, he had a queen and he had two sons by that queen, but he didn't really love the queen. And when the queen died, he wound up in a relationship with a woman he actually loved. And everybody in the palace, made snide comments about how she had cast a spell to make him fall in love with her or whatever. Anyways, the royal family of this country, Agathia, they all have magic. That's why Lavinia has magic, Duke Kierthan has magic, and his brother, who had the crown first, also had magic. So, the brother married Theda, and and then Kierthan decided he was going to murder his brother. His Kierthan, by the way, is the family name. His first name is spelled Ifre, and I have no idea how that's supposed to be pronounced. I don't even have a guess, really. So, like, Ifra, I don't know. Anyways, so I'm not calling him that. In any event, he murders his brother so he can get the throne, as one does in such situations. And so this story is basically Kane, the one of the warriors of the mist whose grandfather was an evil mage. He winds up going undercover in Kierthan's court in order to sort of get a better beat on exactly what's going on. Because if they're going to depose Duke Kierthan, they need to have a better idea of how many men he's got. They need to know what he's doing. They need to have some better idea of what sort of evil magics he's working and the sources of his power and so on and so forth. So Kane goes undercover along with the last member of the Warriors of the Mist. And let's just, be clear about this. Averel is the youngest. And Averel's story in this is the one part of this book that really just makes me a smidgen, really? Really, really? Because at the end of this book, ooh, spoilers, this isn't all spoiler zone, I say it periodically. At the end of this book, Kane has gone together with Theda because they fell in love when she saw him beating somebody up on the practice grounds because, that's what happens. And Gideon has Merowyn, who I wish she would stop being quite so spunky because that's the biggest problem with Merowyn's character is she is the spunky female character who maybe if she were a little less spunky and a little bit more sensible wouldn't be in some of these situations. Not that I'm blaming her for, the abuse or her uncle or whatever, but there's a few times when, she could have been more sensible. Like, I don't know, telling somebody she was going to go out. Evil stalks the land. Why would I tell anyone that I was going to leave the castle? And then there's Murdoch, who gets together with Alina, and Duncan, who gets together with Lavinia. And so at the end of this book, Merowyn and Gideon are kind of going to take over the lands that Merowyn's father had, that Gideon will basically become the lord of those lands. And Murdoch is going to stay with his friend and Alina, and he'll sort of become captain of the guard or whatever. And Lady Theda and Kane have gotten their thing, and Kane is basically told, here, you can become captain of the Duke of Agathia's royal guard. And Sigil, who winds up pledging himself to become one of the warriors of the mist halfway through and then never has to go through with it because everything turns out fine, so good, is actually the next Duke, which we find out along the way that he was Theda's husband's son by a first marriage, if I'm not mistaken, and so he kind of inherits the throne because, his uncle was an evil man who basically snatched it out from under him anyways. And Duncan is going to have to go back to the convent with Lavinia to A, learn how to control his new magic powers, and B, because he wants to be a scholar and so on. And Averel is told, go do stuff. You don't have a girlfriend. You don't have a job. You don't have a cohort of mercenaries to be part of anymore. What you have is 2 dogs and people willing to let you crash on their floor whenever. I mean, metaphorically speaking, since, now everybody's got either castles or a convent with a guest house, so, whatever. But, okay, a manor house, a castle, and a convent with guest rooms. But the point is still, it's 4 out of 5 get true love and a thing to do next, and Averil is told, well, if you want to work for us, I can always use another guardsman. It's what kind of a tacky come down in the world is that? I mean, there's a certain realism to it, I suppose, that, not everything always works out 100% perfectly, but I mean, this is a novel with people falling in love at first, beating up of a red-headed guy on the palace grounds and trusting for absolutely no sane reason, and falling in love because he's not a jerk, and there's a lot of this love at first sight stuff going on in here, and a lot of romantic fantasy novel things. And once you're doing that, the least you could do is give Averil something. But instead, Averil is the least developed character in this trilogy of books. And he's kind of hand waved off as, well, we're not going to pitch you out. It's, these books are fun. I enjoy them, but they're campy fun. And the one thing that I don't like about this is the one thing that I very sincerely dislike about these books is the way that Averil is not actually dealt with, because if you're going to be doing campy fun, you should do it and finish the job and give Averil his happy ending, because what Averil has is 2 dogs, which, I mean, 2 dogs are great if you like dogs. But, it's kind of, he's got 2 dogs and then what? So, it is the one thing that I don't like about this. I like the climax. I like the character of Theda, for one, who is, we're not talking Xena Warrior Princess or Buffy the Vampire Slayer with her. She's strong in that I am going to hang in there and I'm going to protect my people and do what I can for my people. And, and she really makes herself useful in the story. She's not just key in saving Kane in that moment of, Kane, remember who you really are, because Kane lets himself get possessed by the demon, which, I mean, fine. And certainly the please you have to remember who you are shtick is, it's a perfectly valid, much a well-trodden path of fiction. Um, but I like that one of the things she does is she helps actually get Kane out of being kept prisoner. That when she finds out that he has likely been taken prisoner, she goes down and she figures out how to get him out. She gets in contact with Averel and with Kane's totem animal, because they all have totem animals, and Kane's totem animal is actually a gargoyle, which is like not a proper animal. It's like a fantasy animal, and that's kind of weird, but I suppose he gets to be special because his grandfather was a mage. While Duncan has an owl, and Gideon has a hawk or an eagle or a falcon. One of those birds of prey, the cool ones. And Murdoch has what appears to be a mountain lion. Like I said, Averil has two dogs. Um, but Kane, for whatever reason, has a gargoyle because reasons. Anyways, so Kane's gargoyle, she manages to get a hold of Kane's gargoyle, and they go down into Kierthan's, dungeon of death and destruction and evil magic raising and demon summoning and whatnot, and they get Kane out. And Kane and she actually does something. And there's something to be said for a female character who isn't just spunky, but who is actually useful. I do think that I assume that this is supposed to be Lady Theta on the cover because they spend a lot of time hanging out in the garden at night, and so there's the two of them in the garden at dusk. Anyways, I think she looks a little young to have been the wife of a older duke, but I mean, I'm not that good at judging age anyways, and it's a romance novel cover, so I mean, you don't push too hard on the realism on that. Anyhow, but this book, it has a nice climax because, among other things, when you hit the climax, uh, there's a battle, and then the people in the city get told that Theta manages to get a message to the captain of the guard for the city, basically saying, listen, the guys who are attacking the city are actually here to help. Just don't attack them. Can you at least keep people from having getting into a fight? And again, that's one of the things that really wins the day, is that she's able to make sure that everybody pulls back. She's able to make sure that most of the men Gideon and Murdoch and the rest brought to attack the city and distract Kierthan's men and so on and so forth, she's able to make sure that you don't actually have most of them dying, that people are able to basically stop a massive civil war before it starts. There's a battle, there are deaths, but it's not what it could have been, and that's ultimately down to her giving those orders, and that she's in the position to do it. And I like her character best because she really feels like the one who's actually tough as nails at base. Anyway, and everybody gets released from their bondage to the gods, and there's a happy ending for everybody except Averil, who gets a, well, at least you're not working for the gods anymore ending. And that's everything. Good, clean, well, not clean, frequently dirty, shallow fun with a lot of romance novel sex.